Story Room 13 presents. The small town of Bruinhollow was known for its dense fog and autumnal beauty, a quaint place with a tranquility that seemed to repel the chaos of the world beyond its borders. Most of its houses were old, Victorian-style relics that creaked and groaned with the winds that swept through the valleys. Among these, one house stood apart, not in grandeur or style, but in its aura of foreboding that even seasoned locals refused to acknowledge. It was always spoken of in hushed tones, the house with the cursed room, Room 13. The house was nestled at the edge of town, shrouded in decades of gossip and misfortune. Despite the derelict appearance and a stern warning from the elderly townsfolk, a new family decided to move in, drawn by affordable rent and the picturesque location. The Hathaway family arrived early on a Monday morning, parents Jane and Michael, accompanied by their two teenage children, Rachel and Oliver. For them, Room 13 was nothing more than an old wives' tale, a local story designed to deter curious children from wandering into abandoned buildings. Upon their arrival, as they unpacked boxes and explored their new home, the Hathaways discovered a peculiarity about the upper floor. At the end of a dim corridor stretched to a nondescript door, it bore no markings, a plain slab of wood with a brass knob that was unnervingly warm to the touch. Despite initial plans to explore the whole house, they opted to save the room for another day, feeling an inexplicable discomfort inexplicably wash over them as they stood before it. They passed it by, laughing off the chill and heading downstairs to set everything in order. The day-to-day quickly overshadowed thoughts of the room as they settled in. Jane spent early mornings in the garden, while Michael worked remotely, setting up his office in the bright nook off the living room. The children attended the local high school, finding new friends and adapting to town life. Yet, Room 13 lingered in their periphery, an untouched mystery, never fully dismissed. As fall deepened, the days grew shorter and shadows settled in Bruinhollow like drapes. One quiet evening, compelled by an unnamable pull, Oliver decided to explore the curious enclosure his parents hadn't unlocked. Armed with a flashlight and fueled by adolescent bravado, he approached Room 13. He twisted the doorknob with tentative curiosity, and it opened with a croaky groan into darkness, more absolute than he had anticipated. Oliver stepped inside, the beam of his flashlight flickering slightly, a narrow shaft cutting through the gloom. The room was empty, considerably undistinguished, save for the eeriness settled like dust. He sensed rather than saw things in their periphery, indiscernible as they slipped away when he tried to focus. The air was stale, weighted with an almost tangible silence that wrapped around him like a shroud. Despite the initial draw, something in the back of his mind gnawed at him, urging him to retreat. So he did. He spoke little about his experience, rationalizing it as mere nerves. Yet, the next morning, a persistent, hurried knocking sounded from Room 13, echoing through the house and startling the Hathaways from their slumber. They gathered outside the door, exchanging puzzled, wary glances. Jane attempted to open it, finding it suddenly locked, the knob icy and unyielding to her touch. The knocking ceased as abruptly as it had begun, leaving behind an oppressive silence that seemed to fill every corner of the house. Concerned and frustrated, the Hathaways contacted Morgan, the realtor, demanding answers. Morgan arrived at the house with a reluctant sigh, burrowing hands deeper into his coat pockets as he trudged up to the doorframe of Room 13. His demeanor shifted to one of guarded, tight-lipped reluctance when questioned, revealing little more than a vague, conflicting history. Stories of previous owners plagued by inexplicable events, each eventually abandoning the house or, more chillingly, vanishing entirely. Rachel, more skeptical of local lore, proposed they simply leave the door alone. Yet curiosity remained firmly lodged in their minds. That night, unable to shake a growing unease, she found herself sitting outside the room, the house asleep, save for her uneasy thoughts tumbling into each other like stones. As midnight struck, the atmosphere abruptly shifted. The temperature in the hallway plummeted, breath visible like specters before her lips. Then came the whispers, tendrils of voice whispering in an unintelligible language, rising in fervor as though enticing her towards something unseen. Her head ached, the sound gnawing at her like a distant melody she couldn't grasp. Fear welded her to her seat until, drawing in a gasping breath, she retreated to her room, barricading herself with blankets as though they could ward off whatever haunted the dark. Days wore on, each one fraught with escalating disquiet. The once cozy abode turned cold and unwelcoming. Illusions tormented, odd phenomena that seemed to defy logic, a flicker of movement at the edge of vision, shadows that seemed to peer back, reflections that lingered just half a second longer than they should have in mirrors. The family communicated warily, unable to fully embrace the reality of their situation, but bound by a shared sense of dread. One afternoon, desperate to end this spiral of fear, Jane resolved to confront the source. She stood before room 13, hand poised at the door, gathering courage with her breath. As she turned the knob, it swung open easily, though the dark inside seemed to breathe, pressing against the frame as if eager to spill out. Stepping inside, a strange calm enveloped her, accompanied by a sense of familiarity, as if she had ventured there in dreams. The only adornment in the center of the room was a crude wooden chair with a worn book resting atop it. Against her better judgment, Jane leafed through pages, eyes skimming arcane symbols and incomprehensible script that seemed to pulse with an unfamiliar energy. The room twisted around her, walls flexed, stretched, and distorted, as though reality itself struggled to contain an untamed force. Dimly aware of the house groaning around her, she stumbled backward, dropping the book and fleeing the oppressive grasp of the chamber. Back in the sunlit hallway, a tremor clawed at her heart. She drew each breath with difficulty, as if her lungs sought to expel more than air. Gradually, the others crept back from their various corners of the house, drawn by the audible thud of her retreating steps. Silent, she collapsed into Michael's arms, tear-streaked and spent. In her frantic recounting, a shared discomfort suffused them, each intuitive to the inescapable reckoning that the house demanded its due. Oliver, ever impulsive, suggested cleansing the room, inviting blessings to drive whatever presence lurked within out. With tentative agreement, they gathered items that might aid them, incense, candles, salt, and formed a circle in the living room. Together, they summoned strength in whispered prayers, old folk recipes serving as their guides, as though ritual could repel what logic could not. That night, wind howled mercilessly in Bruin Hollow, icy and unyielding. It pressed against the walls, sending shivers through the house as though alive and seeking entrance. Within, candle flames flickered like eyes. Shadows cast exaggerated shapes along every surface. Yet they moved with a purpose, every step reframing their anxiety as resolve. Their procession neared room 13, silent as the void within, words forming quietly on their lips while salt dusted their path like a barrier. A surreal energy emanated from the room, palpable as an electrical current, dense yet calling, a somber symphony in which they found themselves but apart. The door swayed open, yielding with ease, a cloak brushed aside for the storm's heart. Unyielding to the underlying terror that gripped their minds, they entered the room together. It now appeared more substantial, though unchanged, objects stark against the far wall, shadows refusing ambitions to flee. As they settled in a circle upon the floor, flames wavered, and there was a deep, resonant hum, like the very bones of the earth trembling in recognition. The seance began with invocations and solemn chants. Staring into the flickering candlelight, eyes distant, each word uttered as a prayer more than incantation. It built and crescendoed, a crescendo of voices lifting their timbre to meet whatever abode there. Presence heavy, weight shifting like tides around them. It answered in kind, a visceral growl reverberating outward, the house tensing as if in response. Their words wavered and faltered, bravery burning in each uncertain glance. Yet they endured, hearts a single pounding drum, companionship binding them as tightly as bloodlines. A faint whisper grew louder, words cruelly familiar in intonation but otherworldly in context. Desperation warred within, fight instinct, flight instinct. Surrender was not part of the story. With guttural exertion, the house shuddered, its foundation groaning, essence struggling against the foreign occupation. It erupted in a cacophony of sound, walls creaking with unquantifiable weight, windows rattling against their frames. Unearthly screams ruptured from the inside, a singular howl joining their distress as echoes intermingled, an unspoken destiny bound within concrete. Time seemed suspended, forever caught in a thunderous stasis that neither world could define. Yet suddenly, as if cut short by a puppeteer's severed string, silence fell with absolute clarity. The flaming circle of protection subsided into gentle embers, leaving only the quiet crackle of extinguished fear. For once in the long-held breath, Room 13 was utterly, blissfully still. Exhaling as one, the family dawned as the morning star, vibrancy twining with the dissipating shadows. They stood as one, silently acknowledging the unseen forces subdued within and the new dawn which beckoned. For the first time, their house felt like home, a monument to confrontation, survival, and threads woven anew. As they left the room, the door gently closed behind them, grips loosened from a once tenacious hold, contentment settling somewhere beneath. Together, the Hathaways descended to the warm, illuminated day beyond, aware of the world waiting, in beauty renewed and edges softened. The past now seemed a more distant echo than the morning birdsong greeting them beyond. Here, in Bruin Hollow, the fabled house with Room 13 would remember its tale while they moved forward. Unafraid, hearts emboldened, eternally closer than before.